everybody. Today we're going to talk about a word that is a little confusing and often gets misused in the Microsoft 365 area, and that is the word Defender. Specifically, we're going to talk about Microsoft 365 Defender. A Microsoft 365 Defender is not a product, it's a suite of products, some of which used to be called something different, but now they're all under the umbrella of the Microsoft 365 Defender line. They are called Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which is the EDR, keeps our devices safe. There's Microsoft Defender for Office, which is what most people think of the email security. We'll get into more detail on these in a minute. There's Microsoft 365 Defender for Identity. This is the on-premise security that watches what's going on your actual domain if you're syncing your users to the cloud. And then there's Defender for Cloud Apps, which used to be called Cloud App Security, the Microsoft CASB, and they renamed it to Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. I'm emphasizing the last word, Defender for Cloud Apps, because there is a whole different Defender line for the Azure subscription infrastructure side that also can be used in AWS and Google Cloud. That's called Defender for Cloud. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's one word away from what they've renamed the CASB. The CASB is Defender for Cloud Apps, and the infrastructure is Defender for Cloud. We're not going to get into Defender for Cloud today, probably in a future video. We're going to focus on the modern work part of Defender, the Microsoft 365 Defender, with those four product lines. Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office, Defender for Identity, and Defender for Cloud Apps. So let's talk about those. So before we talk about the four main cloud services, let's talk about another product that we have to talk about in this context that also uses the word Defender. And that product is just called Microsoft Defender. That's the antivirus that runs on Windows, but also runs on other platforms like Macintosh. It used to be called Windows Defender. Now that it runs on other platforms, we call it Microsoft Defender. Now, Defender's had a long history. It came out a long time ago, I guess 10 years ago in XP, I believe. And it used to just look for spyware that was injecting itself into browsers and starting automatically in the run and run once registry keys, for instance. But then Microsoft decided, well, that's kind of silly. Let's do a full AV product. So then it became the antivirus and anti-spy, all protections under one hood for the devices. And that's called Microsoft Defender now. That works in a conjunction a lot with one of the cloud products, Defender for Endpoint. Obviously, Defender for Endpoint is the EDR solution, detection and response. One of its big main points is that it delivers cloud-based AV protection. If Microsoft Defender on a PC finds a file doesn't have a signature for, it can send it up to the cloud where it can be examined, maybe exploded, detonated to see if it does anything suspicious. If it does, then Microsoft's stack in the cloud can create a quick fix for it, hopefully very quick, send it back down, and then actually inform the entire company's Microsoft Defenders to be on the lookout for it. So that's how it's supposed to work. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes not so fast. It's just like most other cloud-delivered products like this, cloud-delivered AV products. And then, of course, you get a cloud console from Defender for Endpoint where you can see threats that are found, investigations that are being run, automated investigations, incidents, which are collections of alerts that go into the cloud and correlate things from different devices and also correlate information from different services. Microsoft 365 Defender with both the Microsoft Defender AV and the 4 cloud products make up an extended detection and response system, because now signals from one product like Defender for Endpoint can be shared to Defender for Office and vice versa. And in the security portal, you can actually see those connections visually and in the incidents and alerts correlated together. Well, it looks like this file came from the email, but now it's a virus that got onto the system, or it came from a browser. So XDR is now the name of the game in Microsoft 365 Defender. So let's talk a little more detail about each one of these. So Microsoft Defender used to be called Windows Defender. This is your default AV protection. Has versions for other platforms like Macintosh. It can actually work in a passive mode if you have another AV product. And why would it do that? Well, in passive mode, it can actually send signals up to the Defender for Endpoint. And it can actually run an occasional antivirus scan to see if it can find anything that your other antivirus products miss. But it's not the main one. It wouldn't be the main one that was active all the time, because that would cause a conflict. So again, this just refers to that malware protection on the device. Defender for Endpoint is the EDR for Windows, Macintosh, Linux, even Windows Server is in there as well, but we just focus on end user endpoints for the most part. So it gives you cloud delivered AV protection. Again, information is sent to the cloud, information is sent back. If some suspicious activity or a virus is found on the machine, you'll see that in the console, in the portal, and you can make decisions, start investigations. Investigations can start automatically that span all of these services. It also, though, does a few other things. It's not just AV. It does a vulnerability management. So devices are onboarded into this system, and the easiest way to do that is with Intune. If you're using Microsoft Cloud, then you probably have Intune. Intune can send a package down, a profile down to devices that will tell them how to onboard themselves into the system. It installs a service called Sense that is constantly sending telemetry back to Defender for Endpoint. And one of those bits of telemetry is vulnerability management. So it'll scan the software, scan the versions of the software, and just by that, it can find vulnerabilities. Well, Adobe Acrobat is way out of date, and it'll even tell you about the CVEs that apply to the vulnerabilities that occur in that particular product or version of the product. So it does vulnerability detection, also looks at other settings on the devices that could be improved, and will actually give you recommendations as to what to do, not just software-based, but also configuration-wise. So the Defender for Endpoint can also be put on Macintosh. This requires also some configuration, again, best delivered by something like Intune. The Macintosh, it's a little more involved than the Windows, but it can be done. And once you've configured the correct profiles, it's pretty easy. Once Macintosh devices are onboarded and the policies apply to them, it's more than one. Then they come under the umbrella and they get the Defender product installed on them, the Microsoft Defender locally installed on them, and they're onboarded to Defender for Endpoint. So Defender for Endpoint is the EDR solution. You can see all your devices. You can see the level of vulnerability on each device, and a nice picture in the portal. So they've done a pretty good job on that. You can do a lot of cool extra things with it. You can isolate a device. You can have scans going out from those devices to other devices to see if they can be onboarded. So there's a lot of cool new stuff that they're constantly putting into the product to make it better. The next product, Defender for Office. Now, people think about Defender for Office in terms of email. And yes, that is its main focus, is email. But there's a reason why it's not called Defender for Email or Defender for Exchange. And that's because it does other things. It also can protect Teams and team chats. It also can protect Office documents like Word documents. And what do I mean by that? Well, part of Defender for Office on the email protection is scanning links. This particular product, subproduct, is called Safe Links. Safe Links will take a look at links that are in emails and see if they're on a naughty list, or see if they're not on a naughty list, it'll attempt to scan them to see if it can find something wrong. Well, that same protection is now available to Teams chats. Obviously, someone can put a URL link in a Teams chat. We'd like to get the same kind of protection there and not allow users to click through, for instance, to a bad site. You can also put links into documents like Microsoft Word documents or PowerPoint documents. Well, Defender for Office will also scan those. So that's how we get beyond the email protection into Teams and into Office products. There's other parts of Defender for Office. Obviously, it's looking for phishing. It's looking for a spam and a spam policies. It's also looking for spoofs. So all of these policies are in there, and we'll do another video in more detail and get into the portals and in general how to configure everything. But that's Defender for Office. And again, Defender for Office can share signals with Defender for Endpoint in the security portal, and they can correlate attacks that seem to have started with email and now they're maybe on the system. Maybe they changed something or installed some software. So that's where you get your XDR. The next product, Defender for Identity. This is a different one. This is, yes, it's a cloud service, but most of the work is done on-premise on your domain controllers, for instance. This is a service that you use if you have an on-premise domain that is syncing identities with the cloud using Azure AD Connect, for instance. And the majority of companies that use Office 365, Microsoft 365, are actually doing this. That they're still syncing identities from on-premise to the cloud for various reasons. So we like to keep the domain safe as well, and that's what Defender for Identity aims to do. It has sensors that get put onto domain controllers that check for certain events. You have to set up event logging and some advanced logging on there to look for specific events. It looks for things like lateral movement. It looks for signs of domain takeover, and it sends these signals again back to the cloud service, the security.microsoft.com, the Defender Cloud Service. So that involves installing these agents on the domain controllers, of course. So that stuff gets correlated or collected, I should say, on-premise, and then it's sent up to the cloud. So you can keep your on-premise identities safe with that service. The fourth service is Defender for Cloud Apps. Now, I always emphasize the word apps to make sure that no one thinks I'm talking about the other product, Defender for Cloud, which is, again, the Azure subscription, AWS, Google Cloud, the infrastructure, VM, whatever devices and things you might be protecting over on the other side of things, on the infrastructure side. So this one's called Defender for Cloud Apps. It's the CASB. It used to be called Microsoft Cloud App Security, but now that it's under the Defender product line, they renamed it a little bit, and now they're calling it Defender for Cloud Apps. So it is a standard CASB. It's mainly used for SaaS app discovery and protection. SaaS apps, what's example of a SaaS app? Box, Dropbox, Salesforce, you name it, collaboration apps that are in the cloud that users use a lot. Also, what's another SaaS app? Well, Exchange, SharePoint, Teams. These are SaaS apps, and Cloud App for Security can connect to those as it can connect to other apps in the cloud and provide some protection. So the Cloud App Security can do a few things. Number one, there's ways to discover what people are using. Discover that shadow IT that your users are using, maybe because they couldn't do something with Office or you were preventing them from doing something because of a security concern. Now they've moved to apps that you don't control. We'd like to know about those apps, right? So discovery is a big part of it. You can get discovery from router logs, uploading logs to the cloud app security. You can have continuous uploads. You can see what people are going to. For whatever reason, you can just see these actual connections coming from your router to the cloud. It's going to the box URLs or Dropbox or wherever else. So that's one way to do it. Another great way to do it, and which is one of the main reasons that I bring up discovery, is if you onboard devices to Defender for Endpoint. Well, Defender for Endpoint can then send telemetry to the Defender for Cloud Apps and tell it what those devices are connecting to. So it provides a great source, especially now that people are all over the world. They're not going to an office. They're working from home. They're working from wherever. Now we can get telemetry about where they're going right from the devices themselves. Now, there are security concerns. There's security built in. There's an anonymity. So you can make decisions on that. But the nice thing is that we do get a big list of cloud apps now, the discovery. We can see what people are actually using, and then we can go about the business of bringing those cloud services under our protection, making a single sign-on connections to them with Azure AD. Then having people use their Azure AD credentials to log on to those apps. Now we have some control, right? We can put conditional access on those. We can block certain things. We can see the authentications that are happening. We get a lot of reporting based on that. And then, of course, also we can bring in the cloud app, the Defender for Cloud Apps, and bring its power, its policy power into the fold as well. We can have access policies, based on user group, based on all sorts of different conditions. We can have session policies, web session policies that says, well, you can connect, but you can't download certain things, can't upload certain things. We can use DLP with it. We can even take advantage of some of the functionality that exists in Box and Dropbox, for instance. They have APIs that we connect to through our Defender for Cloud Apps, and we can instruct those APIs to do certain things because we'll basically be taking administrative control over those connections. So a lot of cool things that we can do with Defender for Cloud Apps. I find that most companies are not taking advantage of that because it is another product to learn and to get in and really trying to the politics of trying to bring all those IT shadow IT things under our control gets a little tricky depending on who is actually using them at the company. And I think you know exactly what I mean by that. So, in a nutshell, that is the Microsoft 365 Defender product line. We of course always talk about the Microsoft Defender anti-malware that goes onto the devices themselves, but the main products that fall under the Microsoft 365 Defender are Defender for Endpoint, the EDR system, cloud delivered AV, vulnerability protection, security recommendations, all those kinds of things. Defender for Office, which is the email, but also Teams and Office products. Defender for Identity, the on-premise identity a watcher that runs on domain controllers, sensors. Doesn't have to run on domain controllers. You can actually put an independent sensor on it, but the easiest thing is to put it on a domain controller that takes a look at what's going on in the domains. It audits things. It looks for certain events to track lateral movement, domain takeover. And then the last one, Defender for Cloud Apps, Microsoft's Cloud App Security Broker. So that's it for now. We'll talk to you next time. I'll probably talk about each one of these individually and do a little bit of a screen share so you can see what they look like. Until then, stay safe.